The massive metal doors of Nexus Prime opened with a loud hiss. Commander Lisa Martinez stepped through the entrance and looked around at the biggest trading station she had ever seen. The place was huge. Metal walls stretched up so high that she could barely see the ceiling. Lights of different colors blinked everywhere. Strange sounds filled the air as dozens of alien species talked in languages she did not understand. Lisa walked forward with 3 other humans behind her. Dr. Amy Foster carried a small medical bag and looked excited to see so many different aliens. Lieutenant Casey Williams kept her hand near her weapon and watched everything carefully. Chief Engineer Brooklyn Hayes held a datapad and studied the station's technology with wide eyes. They were here to make the first trade deal between Earth and the Galactic Commerce Union. This was important. If they failed, humans might never get to join the bigger galaxy. If they succeeded, Earth would have access to amazing technology and new worlds. The station was full of aliens Lisa had only seen in pictures. Some looked like giant insects. Others had too many arms or eyes in strange places. But the ones that caught her attention most were the tall, beautiful creatures that seemed to be in charge of everything. These were the Veltar. They looked almost like the elves from old Earth stories, but taller and more graceful. Their skin was silver and had patterns that glowed with soft light. They moved like dancers and spoke in voices that sounded like music. Everyone on the station treated them with respect and fear. Lisa and her team walked toward the center of the station where the Trade Council would meet them. As they moved through the crowds, aliens stopped to stare at the humans. Some pointed and whispered. Others just looked confused, as if they could not believe such small, weak creatures could travel through space. The humans reached a large open area with a high platform in the middle. This was where important meetings happened. Lisa could see the Trade Council members waiting for them. Most were from different alien species, but the one in charge was clearly a Veltar. Before Lisa could reach the platform, a tall figure stepped in front of her. This was another Veltar, but this one wore armor that looked like it was made from starlight. Her silver skin had more glowing patterns than the others, and her eyes were the color of ice. She was beautiful, but her beauty was cold and dangerous. "I'm Kaylin Zephyros," the alien warrior said. Her voice was lovely but filled with disgust. "I am the security chief of this station. You are the humans, I assume?" Lisa nodded politely. "Yes, I am Commander Lisa Martinez. We are here for the trade negotiations." Kaylin laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "Negotiations? Look at you. You are so small and soft. Your skin is pink like a baby's. Your bodies look weak. How did creatures like you even manage to build ships that could reach this place?" Other aliens in the area stopped what they were doing to watch. Lisa felt her face get hot with embarrassment, but she kept her voice calm. "We may look different, but we are here to discuss business. Perhaps we could talk about this later." "Oh, but I am very curious," Kaylin said, walking in a circle around the humans. "You see, the Veltar are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Our technology is beyond anything most species can understand. Our bodies are perfect for combat. Our minds are sharp like our blades." She stopped in front of Lisa and looked down at her. Lisa was not short for a human, but next to the Veltar warrior, she felt tiny. "But you," Kaylin continued, "you are nothing special. You have no claws, no natural armor, no enhanced strength. I heard that on your world, you fight each other constantly. How pathetic. A species so weak that it cannot even live in peace with itself." Dr. Foster stepped forward, but Lisa held up a hand to stop her. She would handle this herself. "We may be different from you," Lisa said quietly. "But we are here for the same reason you are, to make trade deals that help our people." Kaylin laughed again. "Help your people? Little human, you cannot even help yourself." She reached out and grabbed a metal support beam that was as thick as Lisa's arm. With no effort at all, she bent it into a twisted shape. "This is what real strength looks like." The watching aliens murmured in amazement. Some looked frightened. The Veltar were known for their power, but seeing it up close was still shocking. "Very impressive," Lisa said, not backing away. "You are certainly strong." "Strong." Kaylin threw the twisted metal aside. "I am perfection. My people are perfection. We have evolved beyond the need for weakness, unlike some species I could mention. She looked directly at Lisa when she said this. The insult was clear to everyone watching. You know, Kaylin said, her voice getting louder so more aliens could hear. I think the Trade Council should see what they are really dealing with. These humans claim they deserve to join our civilized galaxy, but how can we trust creatures who are so obviously inferior? The crowd grew larger as more aliens came to see what was happening. Lisa could see members of the Trade Council watching. From their platform, this was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. What do you suggest? Lisa asked, knowing she was walking into a trap, but having no choice. Kaylin smiled, and her teeth were very white and very sharp. A simple test. A demonstration of worth. If you are truly ready to join the galactic community, surely you can prove that you belong here. Lisa felt Casey tense up behind her. Amy looked worried. Brooklyn was recording everything on her datapad, probably for their report back to Earth. What kind of test? Lisa asked. A challenge in our combat arena, nothing too difficult for a space-traveling species. Just a few simple exercises to show that you have the strength and intelligence to be our equals. The way she said equals made it clear that she thought no such thing was possible. Lisa knew this was a mistake. She knew she was being manipulated. But she also knew that refusing would be even worse. If humans looked like cowards on their first day at the station, no alien would ever take them seriously. I accept your challenge, Lisa said. The crowd made excited noises. Some aliens looked shocked that the small human had agreed. Others looked like they were already planning to bet against her. Kaylin's smile grew wider. Excellent. We will meet in the arena in 1 hour. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly, little human. I would hate for your first day here to be your last. She turned and walked away, her armor glittering under the station's lights. The crowd began to break up, but Lisa could hear them talking excitedly about what they had just seen. Amy moved, closer to Lisa. Are you sure about this? Lisa watched Kaylin disappear into the crowd. No, but we don't have a choice now. If we back down, the trade negotiations are over before they begin. Casey nodded grimly. What's the plan? Lisa looked around at all the alien faces still watching them. Some looked curious. Some looked worried. A few looked hungry, like they were expecting to see something terrible happen. The plan, Lisa said, quietly, is to show them exactly what humans are capable of. Brooklyn looked up from her datapad. Should I contact the ship? Not yet, Lisa said. Let's see what this warrior thinks she knows about us first. They walked toward the arena, not knowing that in 1 hour everything would change. The arena was bigger than Lisa had expected. It looked like a giant metal bowl turned upside down, with seats going up the walls so high that the people at the top looked like tiny dots. Thousands of aliens had come to watch the challenge. The noise they made was incredible. Lisa stood at one entrance to the arena floor, while Kaylin waited at the other side. Between them was an obstacle course that looked like it had been designed by someone who hated all living things. There were walls to climb, heavy boxes to carry, narrow beams to walk across, and moving parts that could probably crush someone if they made a mistake. Amy, Casey, and Brooklyn sat in the front row of the viewing area. They looked nervous, but tried to appear confident for the cameras that were recording everything. This challenge would be broadcast across the galaxy, and everyone would see how humans performed. A small, round alien with too many eyes floated down to the arena floor. This was the judge who would explain the rules. His voice was high and squeaky, but it carried clearly through the whole arena. Welcome to the Challenge of Worth, the judge announced. Today we will see if the human species deserves to join our galactic community. The challenge has 3 parts. First, the test of strength. Second, the test of wisdom. Third, the test of honor. The crowd cheered loudly. Lisa could see that most of them were cheering for Kaylin. The Veltar warrior raised her hands and smiled, clearly enjoying the attention. The first test begins now, the judge said. Each challenger must complete the obstacle course while carrying the burden stones. The fastest time wins. 2 piles of dark rocks appeared near the starting line. Each pile looked like it weighed as much as a small human. Lisa walked over and tried. To lift her pile, it was incredibly heavy. She could barely get it off the ground. Kaylin picked up her pile like it was made of feathers. She held it above her head with one hand and flexed her muscles for the crowd. They went wild with excitement. This is what happens when evolution creates a perfect warrior, Kaylin called out so everyone could hear. Compare this to the weak little creature that thinks it belongs among us. Lisa ignored the insult and studied the obstacle course. There were 12 different sections, each one harder than the last. Rope walls, balance beams, mud pits, spinning wheels, and obstacles that moved when you got close to them. At the end was a tall wall that looked almost impossible to climb. "Challengers, take your positions," the judge announced. Kaylin moved to the starting line like she was dancing. Every movement was perfect and graceful. She looked like she could complete the course without even breathing hard. Lisa struggled to drag her burden stones to the starting line. By the time she got there, she was already breathing heavily. Some aliens in the crowd laughed. Others looked embarrassed for her. "Begin," the judge said. Kaylin exploded forward like a silver arrow. She carried her burden stones like they weighed nothing and moved through the first obstacles so fast that Lisa could barely follow her movements. She jumped over barriers, swung across gaps, and climbed walls with the grace of a bird flying through the air. Lisa started much more slowly. She could barely lift her burden stones high enough to clear the first barrier, but as she moved through the course, something strange happened. She began to study each obstacle carefully before she attempted it. She tested different approaches. She watched how the moving parts worked. She seemed more interested in understanding the course than in finishing it quickly. From the viewing area, Amy noticed this pattern. "She's not trying to race," she whispered to Casey. "She's learning." "Learning what?" Casey asked. "Everything," Brooklyn said, watching Lisa through her recording device. "Look at how she's testing each section. She's mapping the course." Meanwhile, Kaylin had finished the first half of the course and was moving toward the more difficult sections. She was still moving fast, but Lisa could see that even the Veltar warrior had to slow down and think about some of the later obstacles. The course was designed to challenge anyone, no matter how strong or fast they were. Lisa was still on the early sections, but she was moving with more confidence now. She had figured out that the burden stones could be used in different ways. Instead of just carrying them, she used them as counterweights for some obstacles and as tools for others. The crowd began to murmur with interest. "Clever," one alien said to another. "Primitive, but clever." Kaylin reached the final wall just as Lisa was finishing the middle section of the course. The Veltar warrior looked up at the smooth metal surface that stretched high above her head. There were a few small handholds, but they were far apart, and looked difficult to reach even for someone with her enhanced abilities. She began to climb, using her superior strength to pull herself up the wall. Her movements were powerful, but not as graceful as before. The wall was clearly designed to be the hardest part of the challenge. Lisa finally reached the wall just as Kaylin was halfway to the top. The crowd expected the human to fail immediately. The wall was obviously too hard for such a weak creature. But Lisa did something unexpected. Instead of trying to climb the wall directly, she began to examine it carefully. She ran her hands along the surface, looking for patterns or weaknesses. She studied the handholds and the way they were arranged. Then she began to climb, but not the way Kaylin had. Instead of using pure strength to pull herself up, Lisa used her whole body. She found tiny cracks and irregularities that the Veltar warrior had ignored. She used her feet to push herself up while her hands found new grips. She moved like a spider, distributing her weight carefully and finding purchase where others saw only smooth metal. Kaylin reached the top first, of course. She raised her burden stones above her head and roared in victory. The crowd cheered wildly for their champion. But when Lisa reached the top a few minutes later, something interesting happened. Several aliens in the crowd began to cheer for her too. Not because she had won, but because they were impressed that she had finished at all. Lisa set down her burden stones and looked out at the thousands of watching aliens. She was covered in sweat and breathing hard, but she had completed the course. More importantly, she had done it in a way that no one had expected. "The first test is complete," the judge announced. "Kaylin Zephyros is the winner, but both challengers have finished the course successfully." Kaylin looked annoyed that the judge had mentioned Lisa's completion. "Of course I won," she said loudly. "Did anyone expect anything different? I am a Veltar warrior. She is just a weak human." But as they prepared for the second test, several things were happening that Kaylin did not notice. In the viewing area, Amy was recording data about human performance under stress. Casey was noting tactical information about the arena and its systems. Brooklyn was scanning the station's computer networks and finding security weaknesses that the aliens did not know existed. And far above them, in orbit around the station, the human ship was running silent scans of the entire area. The ship's AI was mapping every vessel in the system and analyzing their weapons and defenses. If something went wrong, the humans would be ready. Most importantly, Lisa was studying Kaylin herself, the way she moved, the way she thought, the way she approached problems. The Veltar warrior was strong and fast and skilled, but she was also predictable. She solved every problem the same way, with overwhelming force and superior ability. Lisa had fought enemies like this before. Back on Earth, during the resource wars, she had faced opponents who seemed impossible to defeat. Armies with better weapons, better training, and better technology. But she had learned that every enemy had weaknesses, even the ones who seemed perfect. "The second test will begin shortly," the judge announced. "This will be the test of wisdom, where each challenger must defend a position against overwhelming odds." Kaylin stretched her muscles and smiled confidently. She had never lost a tactical simulation in her life. How hard could it be to outthink a primitive human? Lisa wiped the sweat from her face and prepared for the next challenge. She had learned something important from the first test. The Veltar were everything they claimed to be: strong, fast, graceful, and skilled. But they were also arrogant. They believed their own propaganda about being perfect, and in Lisa's experience, arrogance was always a weakness that could be exploited. The crowd settled down as the arena floor began to change, transforming into a battlefield for the tactical simulation. Neither challenger knew it yet, but the second test would reveal much more than anyone expected about what humans were really capable of when their backs were against the wall. The arena floor had completely changed for the second test. Where there had been obstacle courses before, now there was a small fortress made of metal walls and energy barriers. Holographic enemies surrounded the fortress on all sides, thousands of them moving closer with weapons ready. The judge floated above the battlefield and explained the rules. Each challenger must defend the central position for 15 minutes against waves of attackers. You may use any weapons provided in the fortress armory. The one who destroys the most enemies wins this test. Lisa looked at the fortress. It was well designed, but not very big. There were weapon stations on the walls and energy shields that could be adjusted to cover different areas. The armory held standard galactic weapons that she had studied but never used in real combat. Kaylin stepped into the fortress first. She moved to the central command station and began activating weapons systems with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. Her fingers danced over the controls, bringing online plasma cannons, energy rifles, and automated defense turrets. "Watch and learn, little human," Kaylin called out. "This is how a real warrior fights." The simulation began. Holographic enemies charged toward the fortress from every direction. They looked like mechanical soldiers with glowing red eyes and weapons that fired deadly energy beams. There were hundreds of them in the first wave alone. Kaylin was magnificent to watch. She moved from weapon to weapon with incredible speed, firing with perfect accuracy. Every shot hit its target. Every movement was efficient and deadly. The plasma cannons roared as she swept them across groups of enemies, destroying dozens at a time. She used the energy shields like a master painter uses a brush, raising and lowering them to protect herself while creating clear firing lanes for her weapons. When enemies got too close to the walls, she used energy rifles to pick them off one by one with shots that never missed. The crowd cheered wildly as Kaylin destroyed wave after wave of attackers. Her kill count climbed rapidly. 50 enemies, then 100, then 200. She made it look easy, like a dance of death that was beautiful and terrible at the same time. When her 15 minutes were finished, Kaylin had destroyed 437 enemies. She stood in the center of the fortress with her arms raised in victory, not even breathing hard. The holographic battlefield was littered with the remains of her targets. 437, the judge announced. A new record for this simulation. The crowd went crazy with excitement. Some aliens were cheering so loudly that the arena walls shook. Others were making bets about whether the human would even survive 5 minutes. Kaylin looked at Lisa with a satisfied smile. Your turn, weak little creature. Try not to embarrass your entire species too badly. Lisa walked into the fortress as the battlefield reset itself. New holographic enemies appeared in the distance, ready for another assault. She looked at the weapon stations and the energy shield controls, but she did not move toward them immediately. Instead, she walked around the entire fortress, studying every corner and every system. She tested the shields to see how fast they could move. She examined the weapons to understand their capabilities and limitations. She even looked at the fortress walls themselves, checking for weak points and alternative positions. What is she doing? One alien in the crowd asked another. I think she is scared, the second alien replied. She knows she cannot win, so she is delaying. But Amy was watching Lisa carefully from the viewing area. She's not scared, she whispered to Casey. She's planning. Planning what? Casey asked. Something different, Brooklyn said, adjusting her recording equipment. Look at how she's examining everything. She's not approaching this like a traditional defense. The simulation began. The first wave of enemies charged toward the fortress, just like they had for Kaylin. Lisa was ready for them, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of standing behind the fortress walls and firing out at the attackers, Lisa did something that shocked everyone watching. She lowered all the energy shields and stepped outside the fortress. The crowd gasped. Several aliens stood up in surprise. This was not how the simulation was supposed to work. The whole point was to defend the fortress, not to abandon it. But Lisa had a plan. She had noticed something that Kaylin had missed. The enemies always attacked in the same patterns. They came from predictable directions and used standard military tactics. They were programmed to assault a defended position, not to hunt a single target in open ground. Lisa ran toward the first group of attackers, using speed and movement to avoid their shots. When she reached them, she used their own weapons against them, grabbing energy rifles from destroyed enemies and turning them on their former allies. The holographic soldiers were confused by this tactic. Their programming told them to attack the fortress, but the defender was no longer in the fortress. Some of them continued toward the empty walls while others turned to chase Lisa. This created chaos in their ranks. Groups of enemies ran into each other. Their formation broke apart. Lisa used this confusion to her advantage, attacking from unexpected directions and disappearing before they could organize a response. She was not as fast as Kaylin, and her aim was not as perfect. But she was unpredictable. Every time the enemies thought they knew where she appeared somewhere else. Every time they adapted to one tactic, she switched to another. The crowd was silent now, watching something they had never seen before. This was not the elegant, powerful combat they were used to. This was something rougher, more desperate, and somehow more frightening. Lisa used the environment in ways that the simulation designers had never intended. She collapsed walls to create barriers. She used destroyed enemies as cover. She even managed to turn some of the fortress weapons around to fire at attackers from behind. When her 15 minutes were finished, Lisa had destroyed 208 enemies, less than half of Kaylin's total, but still an impressive number given her disadvantages. More importantly, she had done something that no one had expected was possible. She had survived 15 minutes of combat using tactics that most of the watching aliens had never seen before. The judge announced her score with obvious confusion. 208 enemies destroyed. The winner of this test is still Kaylin Zephyros. Kaylin raised her arms in victory again, but her smile was not as confident as before. She had won, but the human's performance had been disturbing, in ways she could not quite explain. Primitive tactics, she said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. Crude and desperate. This is what happens when a species never learns to fight with honor. But several aliens in the crowd were talking quietly among themselves. They had seen something in Lisa's performance that worried them. The human had not fought like a civilized being. She had fought like something wild and dangerous, something that refused to die no matter what was done to it. In the viewing area, Casey leaned toward Amy. She threw the match. What do you mean? Amy asked. She could have done better. Much better. But she held back. She didn't want to show them everything she's capable of. Brooklyn nodded. Smart. Let them think they understand us while we learn about them. Down on the arena floor, Lisa walked back toward the fortress. She looked tired and defeated, like someone who had tried her best and failed. But as she passed close to Kaylin, she said something very quietly that only the Veltar warrior could hear. You fight like you've never lost before. Kaylin stopped smiling. There was something in the human's voice that she did not like. Something that suggested Lisa knew things about fighting that went beyond anything they had seen in the simulation. The final test will begin in 10 minutes, the judge announced. This will be the test of honor, single combat with weapons of choice. As the arena prepared for the final challenge, Kaylin found herself thinking about the human's words. She had never lost before, that was true. The Veltar were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated every enemy they had ever faced. But as she looked at Lisa Martinez, she began to wonder what kind of enemies the humans had faced on their own world. What did it take to forge a species that could produce someone who fought like that little human fought? For the first time in her life, Kaylin Zephyros felt something she had never experienced before. She felt doubt. The final test would answer all her questions. But as she prepared her weapons for single combat, she could not shake the feeling that she was about to learn something about humans that she really did not want to know. The arena floor was clear now except for 2 weapon racks placed at opposite ends. This was the final test, and the crowd was more excited than they had been all day. Single combat between species was rare, and most aliens had never seen a human fight with traditional weapons. Kaylin walked to her weapon rack with the confidence of someone who had never been defeated. She examined the choices carefully before selecting her family's ancestral plasma blade. The weapon hummed with energy as she lifted it, casting blue light across her silver skin. This blade had been carried by Veltar warriors for over 1,000 years, and it had never known defeat. She held the weapon above her head and called out to the crowd. This blade has tasted the blood of champions from 100 worlds. Today it will taste human blood for the first time. The crowd roared its approval. Many aliens were already celebrating Kaylin's victory before the fight had even begun. Lisa walked to her weapon rack much more slowly. The crowd expected her to choose one of the advanced energy weapons, or perhaps a traditional sword that might give her some chance against the plasma blade. Instead, she picked up 2 items that made the entire arena fall silent. In her right hand, she held a simple combat knife. It was made of plain metal with no energy field or special properties. In her left hand, she carried what looked like an ancient projectile weapon, something that fired small metal bullets instead of energy beams. The crowd began to laugh. Some aliens pointed and shook their heads in disbelief. Even the judge looked, confused by the human's choices. Has she given up? One alien asked another. She must be insane, came the reply. Those weapons are thousands of years old. Kaylin stared at Lisa's weapons in amazement. Are you mocking me, human? Do you think this is some kind of joke? Lisa checked her weapon carefully and looked up at the Veltar warrior. No joke. These are the weapons I know best. Primitive tools, Kaylin said with disgust. I almost feel sorry for you. This will be over in seconds. The judge floated between them and explained the final rules. Single combat, until one challenger yields or is unable to continue. All weapons are allowed. Combat begins when I give the signal. Lisa and Kaylin moved to the center of the arena. The Veltar warrior held her plasma blade in a perfect fighting stance that looked like it came from an ancient martial arts manual. Every movement was graceful and precise. Lisa held her simple weapons in a way that looked clumsy to most of the watching aliens. Her stance was lower and more spread out, like someone who expected to be hit and was preparing to absorb the impact. This is your last chance to surrender, Kaylin said. I do not wish to seriously hurt you. I appreciate that, Lisa replied quietly. But I'm not going to surrender. The judge raised his hand. Combat begins in 3, 2, 1. Before he could say, begin, a loud alarm started blaring throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and a mechanical voice began speaking in the galactic common language. Alert! Alert! Hostile ships detected. All station. Personnel report to emergency positions. This is not a drill. The crowd began to panic. Aliens started running for the exits, pushing and shoving to get to safety. Through the arena's transparent ceiling, everyone could see ships dropping out of hyperspace around the station. These were not ordinary ships. They were black and angular, covered with weapons, and designed to look as frightening as possible. Every alien in the arena recognized them immediately. "Zephrani Raiders!" someone screamed. The Zephrani were the most feared pirates in the galaxy. They attacked without warning, took what they wanted, and left nothing but destruction behind them. No one had ever successfully fought them off. Most species simply ran when the Zephrani appeared. Kaylin immediately lowered her weapon. "The combat is postponed. I must organize the station's defenses." But Lisa did not lower her weapons. "No." Kaylin stared at her in disbelief. "What did you say?" "I said no. We started this, and we're going to finish it. Right here, right now. Are you completely insane? The station is under attack. People are going to die." Lisa's voice was completely calm. "People die in wars. That's what wars are for. But I made a promise to finish this challenge, and I keep my promises." Around them, the arena was emptying as aliens fled in terror. The station shook as the first Zephrani weapons hit the outer defenses. Through the transparent ceiling, they could see enemy fighters swarming toward the station like angry insects. Kaylin looked at the chaos above them, then back at Lisa. The human stood perfectly still in the middle of the arena, waiting for the combat to continue. There was something in her eyes that the Veltar warrior had never seen before. Not fear, not anger, but a kind of cold determination that was absolutely terrifying. "You are either the bravest creature I have ever met," Kaylin said slowly, "or the most insane." "Maybe both," Lisa replied. "Are we going to fight, or are you going to keep talking?" The station shook again as more weapons struck the defenses. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear the sound of metal tearing as the Zephrani began cutting through the outer hull. Kaylin raised her plasma blade. If the human wanted to fight during a pirate attack, then they would fight. But she would end this quickly so she could help defend the station. She attacked with all her skill and speed, expecting to disable the human with a single strike. Her blade moved faster than most eyes could follow, aimed at Lisa's weapon arm to disarm her without causing serious injury. But Lisa was not where the blade was aimed. She had moved at the last second, not gracefully like a Veltar, but with the rough efficiency of someone who had spent years dodging death. The plasma blade passed through empty air while Lisa's combat knife struck toward Kaylin's side. The Veltar warrior twisted away from the attack, surprised by the human's speed. This was not the clumsy creature she had expected. Lisa moved, like someone who had been in thousands of fights. Someone for whom combat was as natural as breathing. They circled each other as the battle raged outside the arena. Kaylin attacked again, using techniques that had defeated champions across the galaxy. But every time she struck, Lisa was somewhere else. The human seemed to know where the attacks were coming before they happened. "How are you doing this?" Kaylin demanded as another perfect strike missed its target. "Experience," Lisa said. And then she attacked. What happened next shocked Kaylin to her core. Lisa did not fight like the honorable warriors the galaxy was used to. She fought like someone who had survived wars where losing meant extinction. She used every dirty trick, every psychological advantage, and every environmental factor she could find. Lisa threw dirt in Kaylin's eyes. She used her projectile weapon to force the warrior to dodge, then attacked with her knife while Kaylin was off balance. She even used the arena's own features as weapons, kicking up loose debris and using the walls to bounce attacks from unexpected angles. This was not the elegant combat that Veltar learned in their training academies. This was survival fighting, the kind of combat that emerged when civilized rules meant death. The station continued to shake as the Zephrani attack intensified. Through the arena's ceiling, they could see enemy boarding pods attaching to the station's hull. Soon there would be raiders inside the station itself, killing everyone they found. But in the arena, two warriors fought as if the universe contained nothing but them and their battle. Kaylin began to realize that she was not just fighting a human. She was fighting something that her people had never encountered before, a survivor of wars that made galactic conflicts look like children's games. Lisa's weapons were primitive, but her skills were not. Every movement showed years of combat experience. Every attack was designed not to look good, but to end the fight as quickly as possible. For the first time in her life, Kaylin Zephyros was losing a fight. And as the human pressed her attack with relentless determination, the Veltar warrior began to understand what she was really facing. This was not just another alien species seeking membership in galactic civilization. This was something that had been forged in fires that most civilized beings could not even imagine. This was what happened when evolution created not perfect warriors, but perfect survivors. The station shuddered again as the Zephrani broke through the final defenses. Soon the raiders would be inside, and everyone on the station would face the galaxy's most brutal pirates. But as Kaylin fought for her life against a creature she had dismissed as weak and primitive, she began to wonder if the Zephrani might be about to encounter something even more dangerous than they were. The end came suddenly. Kaylin's plasma blade swept toward Lisa's head in a move that should have ended the fight. But Lisa ducked under the attack and drove her combat knife upward, stopping just short of the Veltar warrior's throat. At the same time, her projectile weapon pressed against Kaylin's chest, aimed directly at her heart. For a moment, they stood frozen like that. Kaylin's blade hummed inches from Lisa's shoulder while the human's weapons threatened vital spots that even Veltar armor could not fully protect. Then Lisa did something that shocked Kaylin even more than losing the fight. She stepped back and lowered her weapons. "The challenge is over," Lisa said quietly. "I win." Kaylin stared at her in amazement. The human could have killed her, should have killed her, according to the brutal fighting style she had displayed. But instead, Lisa had pulled back at the last second and claimed victory without drawing. "Blood! Why?" Kaylin asked, breathing heavily. "Why did you not finish it?" Lisa helped the Veltar warrior to her feet. "Because I need your help." Before Kaylin could ask what she meant, the arena's main doors exploded inward. Zephrani raiders poured through the opening, their black armor making them look like death itself. They carried weapons that could cut through almost any defense, and their faces were hidden behind masks that showed only glowing red eyes. There were dozens of them, and they moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything they could not kill. When they saw the two fighters in the center of the arena, they laughed. "Look what we found!" the lead raider called out in a voice like grinding metal. "A Veltar and a human, playing games while their station burns." Lisa stepped forward, placing herself between the raiders and Kaylin. "Kaylin, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The Veltar warrior looked at the human who had just defeated her in fair combat. Everything she thought she knew about humans had been proven wrong in the last few minutes. But there was something in Lisa's voice that demanded trust. "What do you need me to do?" Kaylin asked. "Fight beside me," Lisa said. "Show me what Veltar honor really means." Kaylin raised her plasma blade. "Until death, human warrior." The Zephrani raiders attacked with the overwhelming force they had used to conquer hundreds of worlds. Their weapons blazed with deadly energy, and their tactics were designed to break the will of any opponent. But they had never fought anything like the combination of Lisa Martinez and Kaylin Zephyros working together. Kaylin fought with all the skill and power that had made the Veltar feared across the galaxy. Her plasma blade carved through enemy weapons and armor like they were made of paper. Her movements were so fast and precise that she seemed to be dancing through the battle. Lisa fought with the savage determination that had carried humanity through wars that lasted for generations. She used captured enemy weapons and turned the raiders' own tactics against them. Where Kaylin was elegant, Lisa was efficient. Where Kaylin was beautiful, Lisa was terrifying. Together, they were unstoppable. The first wave of raiders fell quickly. The second wave hesitated, confused by the fierce resistance they were meeting. The third wave never came, because by then, the other humans had arrived. Amy burst through a side entrance carrying medical supplies that she immediately began using to treat wounded aliens. But these were not ordinary medical supplies. The devices she used could analyze and treat any alien physiology instantly, technology that most species thought was impossible. Casey appeared on the upper levels of the arena with weapons that no one had seen before. She coordinated the station's panicked defenders into an efficient fighting force, turning confusion into organized resistance in a matter of minutes. Brooklyn took control of the station's computer systems, locking down areas to trap raiders. and opening others to give defenders tactical advantages. Her fingers flew over control panels with a speed that amazed even the Zafrani, who were experts at breaking into enemy systems. But the biggest shock came when Lisa activated her communication device and spoke to her ship in orbit. "This is Martinez. Execute Thunderbolt Protocol." High above the station, the human ship had been running silent and appearing helpless since they arrived. The aliens had assumed it was primitive technology barely capable of interstellar travel. They were wrong. The ship that uncloaked itself was larger than anyone had expected and covered with weapons that belonged in nightmares. But more importantly, it moved with a grace and speed that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about human engineering. The ship struck the Zafrani fleet like a hammer hitting glass. Weapons that had never been seen before tore through pirate defenses that had protected them for centuries. Advanced armor shrugged off return fire that would have destroyed any known vessel. In minutes, the feared Zafrani fleet was either destroyed or fleeing in terror. The pirates who had never been defeated were running from a single human ship like frightened children. Back in the arena, the remaining raiders threw down their weapons and surrendered. They had seen their fleet destroyed and their tactics proven useless. For the first time in their history, the Zafrani had met something stronger than they were. Kaylin stared at the humans in amazement. Lisa Martinez stood among the defeated raiders, looking like she had simply finished a routine training exercise. Amy was treating wounded aliens with technology that seemed like magic. Casey was organizing cleanup teams with military efficiency. Brooklyn was restoring the station's systems faster than should have been possible. "Who are you?" Kaylin asked quietly. "What are you really?" Lisa wiped blood from her combat knife and looked at the Veltar warrior. "We're humans. We're survivors. We come from a world where peace was so rare that most of our history is just one war after another. We learned to fight because if we didn't, we died." She gestured toward her team. Amy survived medical emergencies where she had to save lives, with broken equipment and no supplies. Casey commanded troops in battles where retreat meant genocide. Brooklyn kept communication networks running while cities burned around her. Lisa looked around the arena at all the aliens who were staring at the humans with new understanding. "You called us weak because we're not as strong as Veltar. You called us primitive because our technology looked simple. But you never asked the right question." "What question?" Kaylin asked. "You never asked what it takes to survive on a world where your own species is your greatest enemy. You never asked what kind of people emerge from thousands of years of constant war. You never asked why we kept fighting when any reasonable species would have given up." The arena was silent except for the sound of emergency teams working to repair the damage. Every alien present was listening to Lisa's words and beginning to understand what they really meant. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy," Lisa continued. "We're not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced, but we have something that most civilized species lost a long time ago. We have the absolute refusal to quit, no matter what happens to us." She helped Kaylin clean her wounds with supplies from Amy's medical kit. "We didn't come here to conquer anyone or prove we're superior. We came here to trade and learn and maybe find some friends among the stars. But if someone threatens us or our allies, they'll discover what humans do to enemies." Kaylin looked around at the destroyed Zafrani equipment and the fleeing pirate ships. "The Zafrani have terrorized this sector for generations. No one has ever defeated them before." "They never fought humans before," Casey said, joining the conversation. "They never fought people who learned warfare from necessity instead of choice." Brooklyn looked up from her work on the station's systems. "The galaxy has been at peace for so long that most species forgot what real war looks like. Humans never had that luxury." Amy finished treating an injured alien and stood up. "But we don't want to be conquerors. We want to be healers and builders and explorers. We just want to do it without anyone trying to kill us." Kaylin was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything she had seen. Finally, she turned to Lisa with something like awe in her voice. "I mocked you. I called you weak and primitive. I thought my people were superior because we are strong and beautiful and advanced." "Your people are all of those things," Lisa agreed. "The Veltar are amazing, but every species has strengths." "What is humanity's strength?" Kaylin asked. Lisa smiled, and for the first time since they met, it was not a warrior's smile, but something warmer and more human. We never give up. Ever. No matter what the odds are, no matter how hopeless things look, humans keep fighting until we win, or until there are no more humans left to fight. That's our gift to the galaxy. Kaylin knelt before Lisa in the traditional Veltar gesture of respect. I formally request that the Veltar Empire enter into alliance with humanity, not as the dominant partner, but as equals who have finally found worthy companions among the stars. Lisa helped her stand. I think that can be arranged. As they walked out of the arena together, surrounded by the wreckage of the greatest pirate fleet in galactic history, Kaylin realized that this day had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same now that humans had arrived, but for the first time in her life, she was not afraid of change. She was excited to see what these amazing, terrifying, wonderful creatures would do next.